Welcome to the 9th episode of Let's Talk Sports by the Lake. I'm your host, Julian Howell, and this is my co-host, Jacob Barco. And so, Jake, there's been a lot going on in the NFL offseason, so let's start with that. The NFL Combine happened this past weekend.
Absolutely. The 2018 NFL Combine wrapped up this past weekend. There were a few standout Combine participants. The top one being the top running back on the board, Saquon Barkley, who is a junior from Penn State. He really shattered a lot of the physical aspects of the Combine. He ran a 4.4 40 time, had a 41-inch vertical leap, and he also recorded 29 bench press reps in the bench press. He really had a standout Combine, and he really, impressed a lot of the scouts, a lot of the NFL teams that were there. They had already ranked him as the #1 running back in this year's draft, but a lot of people really have him nowadays possibly going #1. Just a few other stats, his Combine results show that he's stronger than Joe Thomas, quicker than Deshaun Jackson, faster than Devin Hester, and he jumps higher than Julio Jones. I think just those 4 statements alone put him in the running to be drafted #1 overall. How do you feel about Saquon's Combine?
Well, obviously, he's a very dynamic player. He had a really good Combine, but it's easy to get caught up in Combine numbers or Combine statistics because there's some players who run slower 40s, but they end up being great players. So it's easy to get fixated on that or drink the Kool-Aid, if you will.
Absolutely, I agree. And it's a lot of things at the Combine are blown out of proportion. Again, 40 time is a big thing, like you discussed. But I think Saquon is a rare breed where he has the statistics at the Combine that show his immense athleticism.
Oh yes.
But also his on-field production as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. The next we have the quarterbacks. The standout quarterback was Josh Allen from Wyoming. He's a junior. You want to touch on Josh Allen here?
Yeah. So, a lot of the scouts were really impressed with his measurables. So he's 6'5", 237. So that's the type of size you want to see out of a prototypical quarterback in the NFL. And he did really well in the passing drill. So he did well with the short throws, intermediate throws, and the deep throws. So, maybe he's someone who could be in consideration for the #1 pick.
I agree. I think he did show a very great Combine performance. A lot of people have the knock on Josh Allen as being, a deep throw passer, but his completion percentage isn't very high. Honestly, he has a very, very low completion percentage as a Division I quarterback coming out of Wyoming. But he does have a huge arm. He has all the intangibles as that prototypical quarterback, like you said. But yeah, I think he is in the running as well for the #1 pick to the Cleveland Browns. Of course, they're still looking for a quarterback after all these years, and they don't really have anyone there to play quarterback right now. So. Josh Allen is certainly in the running. The third standout performer at the NFL Combine that we have on our list is Shaquem Griffin. He's a senior out of UCF. You want to talk about Shaquem here?
Oh, yeah. So, Shaquem had a really good NFL Combine as well. So he ran a 4.38 40 time. So that was the official 40 time. And did 20 reps in the bench press. And it's really a feel-good story because he had his hand amputated when he was 3 or 4 years old. So he's really had to persevere to be a great football player. And in that bench press, he had a prosthetic hand to do the bench press. And so what are your thoughts about
I think it's an amazing story. He put up 220 pounds, which is the standard on the bench press, 20 times. To do that with, literally one hand, and his other arm had a prosthetic on it is amazing to me. I think that's an amazing feat of athleticism, and again, it shows his perseverance, not only as an athlete, but as a human being. So I think, he really improved his draft stock at the NFL Combine.
Yeah, maybe it could be a steal steal for some team.
Yeah, I agree. I think he could be a steal in the draft. Again, he is a linebacker out of UCF.
Yes.
So that does it for the combine portion of this. We're going to move on to the NFL offseason, and we'll just kind of talk about a couple trades that happened this offseason. If you want to start us off with that, Julian.
Oh yeah. So Kansas City traded Alex Smith to the Washington Redskins for a third-round pick in this year's draft and cornerback Kendall Fuller. And I think this trade makes it really clear, Jake, that the Kansas City Chiefs are rebuilding. Because they drafted Patrick Mahomes in the first round of last year's draft. So what are your thoughts about the Alex Smith trade?
I think you're absolutely right. I don't know necessarily that they're tearing everything down and rebuilding, but I think they must have a lot of confidence in Patrick Mahomes in order to trade their starting quarterback, Alex Smith, away. They obviously did get a good return. They got a third-round pick and a starting corner in Kendall Fuller. But yeah, I think that they really obviously must think that Patrick Mahomes is going to be their franchise quarterback going forward. If they, obviously, if they made this move.
Yeah.
So, how do you feel about that?
I think that is a fair statement because maybe it's not necessarily a rebuilding project like the Seattle Seahawks are doing right now. I think it's just moving a few players around here and there.
Absolutely. So, I agree. Secondly, the Kansas City Chiefs also made a move. They traded their starting quarterback, Marcus Peters, to the LA Rams for a 2018 fourth-round pick and a 2019 second-round pick. So they really are making moves. I think Marcus Peters' play off the field a little bit had something to do with this. What do you think?
Well, I think so as well. They obviously took a chance on him when they drafted him because he had some issues at the University of Washington. And I feel like he had calmed down a little bit, but he still has some on-the-field antics. Like he threw a challenge flag into the stands. And I feel like sometimes if you watch any of his highlights, he sometimes slacks off, like especially with tackling. Like there was one time he was like waiting for his teammates just to tackle for him, like saying it was their job, calling tackling a business decision. If you're playing defense, you got to tackle.
Exactly. If you're playing cornerback, you should know how to tackle and be aggressive in your tackling skills.
I think it's important to mention that he did make 2 Pro Bowls in his first 3 years, which is really good. He has almost 20 interceptions with 19. So he's definitely a good player. Just needs to put more effort and live up to his potential,
Right, I agree. I think maybe a fresh start in the LA Rams defense will give him that concentration and maybe motivation to become a better player on and off the field. The last trade we'll talk about is not necessarily a trade at all because Kirk Cousins was recently not franchise tagged by the Redskins, so he will become a free agent in 2018. Where do you think Kirk Cousins is going to land and why?
I think either the Minnesota Vikings or the Denver Broncos because both teams have great defenses and some talent on offense as well, So I think maybe those are 2 teams that could fit. What do you think, Jake?
I agree. I think the Jets are the team that's going to throw the most money at Kirk Cousins. Honestly, I think it all depends on what he's looking for, not only as a player but as a person. If he's looking to be the highest paid quarterback, I think he'll go to the Jets. If he's looking to be in a situation where he can possibly go to the Super Bowl within the next year or so, I think he's probably going to go to the Vikings or the Broncos. Situationally, if I were Kirk Cousins right now, I'd probably go to the Vikings or the Broncos. They're obviously going to be able to pay him some money, but also can put a great team on the field with him at the helm at quarterback. His salary is projected to be anywhere from $30 million to $35 to $40 million, just depending on where he signs and what kind of deal they get him, and that's annually. So that's quite a bit of money to be paying out. But again, some of these teams do have the salary cap to afford it. The dark horse in this race is, of course, the Cleveland Browns. I like to say they do have a shot at signing Kirk Cousins. I don't know how realistic it is, but Joe Thomas, our offensive lineman, future Hall of Fame offensive lineman, is certainly making a push and a case for it on Twitter for the Browns to sign Kirk Cousins. So we will see where the Kirk sweepstakes takes us.
Yeah, and just a quick question for you. Do you think the Browns will sign A.J. McCarron?
It's been talked about. I think he would be a great bridge quarterback for us, but he is a free agent now. The Bengals did not re-sign him, so I think it's a possibility. The Browns will sign A.J. McCarron and possibly take Saquon Barkley #1 in the draft. So the draft is coming up here in April, so we will see.
Yeah, I mean, so that about does it for our NFL segment. Next, we will be talking about the NBA.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Sports by the Lake. We're going to introduce you to our NBA segment next. And the first topic up for this slate is Lonzo Ball of the Los Angeles Lakers. Of course, very famous due to his father, LeVar Ball, and his promotional skills, and also his two brothers that play overseas basketball. But is it fair to call Lonzo Ball a bust? Is it too early to call him a bust? How do you feel about that, Julian?
Well, I think it's too early because it's only his rookie year, and I feel like a lot of pressure was placed on him from like his dad speaking a lot to the media, and he's not shooting the ball well. He's shooting about 37% from the field and 48% from the free throw line, which is just atrocious.
It is worse than Shaquille O'Neal.
Worse than Shaquille O'Neal, and I mean, but he is contributing in other ways. He's averaging 7 assists per game as well as 7 rebounds per game. So he's really contributing in other areas, and hopefully, he continues to get better with his shot.
I agree. I think he is still contributing, as you said, statistics-wise, in assists and rebounds. His shot right now is not falling, and that happens a lot with rookies in the NBA. He's still a rookie. He has still a lot of room and potential to grow. Obviously, the Lakers invested a first-round pick in him, so they're going to give them that time to develop. And on the other side of things, he has Magic Johnson in his corner with the Lakers, and I think Magic is going to work with him a little bit more in the offseason now that he's able to. But is LeVar Ball responsible for the narrative surrounding Lonzo this first year? How do you think that really has an impact on Lonzo and how he's playing right now?
I think so because, being a rookie, you're going into a situation where, your team most likely lost the majority of their games to previous seasons. So it's really a tough situation. LeVar predicted that Lonzo would take the Lakers to the playoffs, win 50-plus games, and really just some predictions or goals that are too lofty for, a rookie.
Absolutely. I think that, those were unattainable goals. It is great to have those goals, but 50 games going to the playoffs with the young Lakers team that they have, Lonzo Ball isn't the next coming of LeBron James. So I think that pressure may have a little bit to do with it, but I think he still has a lot of room for growth and will be, a successful NBA player when all is said and done. We're going to move on to the NBA trade deadline. There was a lot of big moves this year, most notably by my favorite team, the Cleveland Cavaliers. They completely revamped their roster at the trade deadline. They traded Isaiah Thomas, Channing Frye, and a 2018 first-rounder to that Los Angeles Lakers team and received back Jordan Clarkson and Larry Nance. What do you think about that first trade, and why do you think they did it?
Well, I think they're really just trying to revamp their roster. And Isaiah Thomas wasn't working out. Channing Frye didn't really have a role on the Cavaliers anymore. And I think, Jordan Clarkson and Larry Nance are two players that play really hard. Larry Nance hustles, on both ends of the floor.
Absolutely.
He had a really good game against the Pistons Monday night. He scored 22 points, his first 20-point game, so I feel like that's working out. And, let's talk about the trade involving Ronnie Hood and George Hill. So it was it was a three-team trade. So they also received George Hill and Ronnie Hood, who both play guard.
They did. George Hill edition, I think, is huge for us, for the Cavaliers, that is. I think he is a great on-the-ball defender. He has the highest three-point completion percentage in the league this year. So if LeBron drives in the lane, kicks it out to George Hill, half the time he's going to make that three. So I think it was a great trade for them. Rodney Hood is a great addition as well. Left-handed guard, can also shoot the three pretty well. But they also got rid of a lot of the dead weight on the team. They got rid of Derrick Rose, who wasn't really contributing. Jay Crowder, who I thought was going to be a great addition this year defensively, really wasn't playing to his potential or expectations. And they also traded Iman Shumpert, who kind of had a lesser role this year with the team. So I think that really infused the Cavaliers. I think it really gave them a lot more youth, as you just previously discussed. And I think it made them better defenders overall. So I think it was a couple of great moves by the team, and hopefully it'll push them again back into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the Ronnie Hood acquisition is really good because he's a really good two-way player.
Absolutely, he can play offense and defense. Again, he can score the ball, so I think it's going to be a good fit for them. They've only played, I think, less than 10 games with after these two trades, so they're still going to have to fit and work together as a team and figure out how everybody meshes. But hopefully, they can figure that out before the playoffs. Next trade we'll talk about is with your favorite team, the Detroit Pistons. Actually, before we touch on that, we'll talk about the last player that was traded from the Cavs. It was Dwayne Wade, of course, one of a lot of people's favorite player in the NBA, formerly with the Miami Heat. The Cavaliers traded Dwayne Wade back to the Miami Heat for a 2024 second-round pick. Why do you think they did that?
Well, I think Dwayne Wade wanted to finish his career where it started, so I feel like it's something he really wanted to do. So, and they're in the playoff race, so maybe they'll go off in a big way.
Yeah, maybe Dwayne Wade will take them deep into the playoffs this year and go out as a champion again. But you never know. I think they when they had added those new players, obviously they're guards, so Dwayne Wade's playing time was going to be reduced. So I think they did a service to him and said, hey, you're going to be a bench and role player now. We know you want to start. You have that relationship rebuilt with Pat Riley. Are you willing to go back there? So I think they really did him a service in trading him. But again, we're going to touch on your favorite team, the Detroit Pistons.
Yes.
They made a huge splash in free agency this year, acquiring Blake Griffin from the Clippers.
Yeah, so they made the trade like about a week before the trade deadline. So they acquired Blake Griffin. They also acquired Bryce Johnson and Willie Reed as well, two other big men. And they traded Tobias Harris, Avery Bradley, and center Boban Marjanovic, and two projected draft picks, a first rounder and a second rounder. And in addition, they also made some other trades. They traded Willie Reed and a future second round pick to the Chicago Bulls for Jameer Nelson, who used to play for Stan Van Gundy in Orlando. And they also traded Bryce Johnson and a second round pick to the Grizzlies for forward James Ennis. So, it's really, acquiring Blake Griffin and some other small deals.
Absolutely. I think the Pistons are making some moves this year to get to the playoffs. They have obviously Andre Drummond, still a huge player on their team. That front court of Drummond and Blake Griffin, I think, is going to be unstoppable in the NBA. They've been winning games. They obviously improved with the acquisitions they've made. But I think that they're a very young team still. I think they still have a lot of strides to make. But the addition of Blake Griffin and some of these smaller guards can really push them over the top.
Well, as of right now, they're ninth in the East right now. They're 29-36. So they've actually been struggling lately. They're 2-8 in their last 10 games. And, I think they're waiting for Reggie Jackson to come back to see how he fits into the fold and see if they can make a push for the playoffs, because they're behind the 76ers, the Heat, and the Bucks, so they really have to play well down the stretch
to make that final playoff.
Yes.
Very good. Well, that does it for our NBA segment. The next thing we're going to discuss is the college basketball and the March Madness tournament.
Well, let's talk sports by the lake. We are going to do our last segment, which is college basketball, and we're going to make our March Madness predictions. So, Jake, what do you think?
Well, it's hard to say because they haven't released the final bracket for March Madness, but the 64-team bracket, I believe, is going to be announced by Sunday. My favorite team is the North Carolina Tar Heels. I'm wearing the baby blue today. for the Tar Heels. But I think the final 4 teams that I'm going to select for this year's NCAA tournament are going to be Virginia, who is ranked number 1 right now in the AP Top 25. Michigan State, who are kind of an underdog but are still led by Tom Izzo. The North Carolina Tar Heels, of course, with Roy Williams leading that team, and then also the Duke Blue Devils. So I am picking 2 ACC teams in UNC and Duke, but I think those are going to be our final 4 teams for this year. What is your final 4 prediction, and what is your favorite NCAA basketball team?
So my favorite NCAA basketball team is the Michigan Wolverines, go blue. And for my Final Four prediction, I chose Virginia, Michigan, Villanova, and Cincinnati. I feel like all 4 of these teams are really well coached, like with Tony Bennett for Virginia, John Beilein for Michigan, Jay Wright for Villanova, and Mick Cronin for Cincinnati. So, and all these teams have 3 or more players scoring in double digits. So I think it's really going to be a good March Madness, a really good tournament, if you will.
I agree. I think that this tournament has a lot of talented teams in it, and I hope that the talented teams will not be overshadowed by the current NCAA investigations into pay-to-play scandals and whether players are paid off by agents and things like that. So that's a big story going on right now in the NCAA, but I hope, for the sake of these teams and players that they are not overshadowed by that story, and that people will actually appreciate all the hard work that these young men have done, in their collegiate careers leading up to the NCAA tournament. And that does it for our last segment of Let's Talk Sports by the Lake. My name is Jacob Bartko, and I'm here with my co-host Julian Howe. And we want to thank you and hope you tune in shortly for our next episode.
Thank you.